there, interwebs. I hope you're all doing well. So something very funny happened on Twitter, or I guess the artist formerly known as Twitter, in the past couple days that I just have to share because it's very rare these days that anything somewhat positive happens on Twitter. And I wouldn't even qualify this as positive, but like at least in the vein of like it doesn't make me feel sad and angry and vitriolic like most of Twitter does these days. So I just kind of wanted to share it, and that is the fact that Elon Musk replied to one of J.K. Rowling's anti-trans tweets, or you could just call them one of J.K. Rowling's tweets because they are mostly anti-trans tweets at this point, and him telling her to kind of chill out with the transphobia, which is saying something considering that Elon Musk himself is also a giant transphobe and also contributed to many other forms of fascism and bigotry. So when Elon Musk, of all people, is telling you to chill, that's saying something. So I kind of wanted to share it with you, kind of like take a moment of like, that's interesting out of it, but also talk about it a little bit and kind of like what it means a little bit. I don't want to like over-ascribe too much to it, but it's just sort of an interesting dynamic that I want to talk about. So I'll share the tweets in a second, but just to give a little background for those of you who don't know, I don't know why you wouldn't know if you've been following my channel, but like J.K. Rowling has obviously been a huge transphobe and saying a lot of anti-trans things, doing some Nazi crime denialism when it comes to how the Nazis targeted trans people, which I've talked about in other videos and things like that. So like she has gone far down the radicalization pipeline of anti-trans hate, that I've talked about in other videos, both here and on my main channel. And this is the thing that you often see with people who fall into these anti-trans rabbit holes. It becomes their entire life. It becomes everything that they think about, and they filter everything through it because they see the world as us versus trans people, that us versus them mindset, specifically with J.K. Rowling and many TERFs, cis women versus trans women. They wouldn't even qualify themselves as cis women. They would just say biological women, usually meaning upper-class white women when they say biological women. And so, they filter everything through that mindset and becomes their entire world because it's just been so, the stakes have been so heightened for them. They've been so radicalized into it. Their entire friendship groups have become about this like very cult-like view of trans people and viewing us as enemies, especially trans women very specifically, but also trans people generally. They infantilize trans men. They sort of like don't view non-binary people as legitimate, things like that. That's just where she's been at. And she's been just doing that on her Twitter all the time. And like she's also very online focused. Like she just only stays online and talks about trans people. It's like chill the hell out and log off, please, J.K. Rowling. And so here's the exchange of what happened when Elon Musk replied to one of J.K. Rowling's tweets.
So here is another one of J.K. Rowling's typically anti-trans tweets that I'm not going to read here because it's more of her transphobic nonsense that's not really anything new or special given everything that she's been saying over the past few years. But in response to that tweet, Elon Musk came in and replied, "While I heartily agree with your points regarding sex/gender," I don't know why that's the voice I'm going with for Elon Musk, but here we go. "May I suggest also posting interesting and positive content on other matters."
So this is fascinating, right? Because like I said, Elon Musk is just as much a transphobe as J.K. Rowling. He's also like shared What is a Woman, Matt Walsh's horrific anti-trans propaganda film on his platform. Like arguably he is probably one of the biggest contributors right next to J.K. Rowling to, the mainstreaming of transphobia and anti-trans hate today. Like I would put him and J.K. Rowling like kind of next to each other. There's certainly probably other folks as well that you could toss in that bucket as well, but certainly they are up there and very close. It's just interesting to see that because it kind of speaks to a few things. First off, it just speaks to how much when you look at TERFs, how much their entire worldview becomes very much centered around trans people and trans focus. And while Elon Musk also has that very much, and I've talked about this in other videos, has also very much fallen down the, anti-trans pipeline. And very much also that has helped shape his worldview in a lot of senses. You talked about like how he has a trans daughter and how he said, she hates me, she hates capitalism now, and that's what radicalized me. Like he's talked about like how his transphobia is partially, not solely, but partially what radicalized him into a lot of his more, far-right kind of fascistic viewpoints. But the other thing, too, is, as a man of huge privilege and a man with a lot of money, one of the richest men in the world, I think he still is the richest man in the world, close to. I don't know if he's lost that position because of all the money he's lost over Twitter stuff and other things. But he's certainly very, very rich. And as a result, his viewpoint kind of extends to numerous other like bigotries that he's framed things as. Like he's also attacked Jewish organizations, saying like they've ruined my ability to sell ads on Twitter. And the groups he's targeted are complicated in terms of their politics with Israel and stuff like that, but that's a whole other conversation. The point is he's targeted Jewish people to blame them like, oh, they are influencing my money, which is an anti-Semitic stereotype. And so he has all these other interests that sort of all intersect with like his place of privilege and these other things, and he tries to frame it in these like positive ways of like, oh, Tesla's going to do great things, we have our brain chip sort of things, but it is all built on these like exploitations and anxieties that he has as a very privileged white dude with a lot of money running businesses and things like that. And so he is able to like be like, oh, I'm talking positively about this stuff, when really he is exploiting a lot of the folks under him in his hierarchy that he has built, and targeting other groups. Whereas J.K. Rowling, she is also a woman of intense privilege and class, right? She also has a lot of money. But she has also been very much radicalized into like a single issue viewpoint because of how, our society sort of takes these upper class white women and uses their, white feminism and very deliberately targets it in specific ways, in this case towards trans people. But you've also seen this with like many other, white women throughout history, about like how there was many white suffragettes who like targeted black women and the black vote, and saying like black women in the United States are going to keep white women from getting the vote, so we need to go after them. It needs to be a white versus black women thing. You've also seen this with like gay folks back during like the I believe like the 80s, who you had like the sort of Anita Bryant, very much focused on that as like a single issue thing. And so it's interesting to look at that and see like, oh, they both are huge transphobes, and yet how, J.K. Rowling has been so radicalized into the single issue because of viewing her womanhood as this thing that needs to be protected, and viewing it through this filter of like, I don't have this privilege of manhood, and try and target everything through that prism. Whereas Elon Musk kind of sits at the top of this hierarchy and has a lot of anxieties that he is expressing in very fascistic ways as a result of all of that. And it kind of speaks again to like how, regardless of where you sit in a hierarchy, when we live in a society of hierarchies, they forge our own chains in many ways. Even though if you are an oppressor, you are the one contributing to it, it still sort of confines you as well, and confines your humanity. And then the other dynamic of this too, and other people were pointing out too, is that Elon Musk is essentially telling J.K. Rowling to smile more. I mean, which is also sexist as well. And it's like, it's a weird dynamic to be like, Elon Musk being like, talk more positively, you'd get more views if you smiled more on Twitter instead of talking about the transes. And it's like, yes, she shouldn't be so focused on trans people, but also like, you shouldn't be telling a woman how to like conduct herself. So it's like this weird confluence of sexism that he is putting in there that intersects with transphobia as well, and we can see how those things interact. I mean, look at like Matt Walsh, how he uses What Is Woman, the documentary, to be able to like argue for a view of womanhood that still places men at the top of a hierarchy. And it's how TERFs are also doing it, but they don't like sort of cognitively realize how they're still framing this sort of binary view of manhood and patriarchy that they're ultimately reinforcing.
Also, interestingly, J.K. Rowling did actually respond to Elon Musk's tweet by saying that she will start tweeting more positive-facing things, which is a very interesting response, because despite the fact that trans people have been telling J.K. Rowling to stop talking about us for years now, just stop, like, you don't have to be focusing on us, the only person she ends up listening to is the cis dude with privilege even above her richness. So it's just kind of interesting to me that this woman who is constantly talking about stopping men from entering women's spaces will listen to a man coming into what she views as a woman-centric conversation. Now, of course, this isn't going to stop J.K. Rowling from talking about trans people. In fact, I'm very much sure by the time I post this video, she is very much on that horse still again on Twitter. It's not going to change that. But it is just interesting to me that she does respond to Elon Musk telling her to, smile more positively on Twitter, despite the fact that she's constantly talking about not wanting men, which she refers to trans women as, from telling her what to do.
And it's just a very fascinating dynamic to me to see here being played out in like the sexism of Elon Musk in this moment, but also the transphobia that they both share, and also Elon Musk's own anxieties, the radicalization of J.K. Rowling. And it is really, I don't know, it's just, it is a fascinating moment to me.
Also worth mentioning that while J.K. Rowling is specifically focused on trans people, she has also expressed other bigotry, such as her anti-Semitism or racism that you can see popping up in the Harry Potter books, but also in a lot of her anti-trans advocacy as well, that is not uncommon in TERF spaces, such as the marginalization of people of color within TERF spaces and generally to reinforce a version of womanhood that is centralized in whiteness and even more so in upper-class white womanhood.
The other element of it too is we've now are seeing a lot of the J.K. Rowling crowd that usually attacks trans women. Like I've been targeted by J.K. Rowling's crowd of TERF people that like she sends to harass people online. Now being targeted at Elon Musk, and I'm sure Elon Musk gets a lot of other crap. So I doubt there's probably more of a drop in the bucket for him. Not that anyone deserves it. And again, Elon Musk, a terrible person for numerous reasons. I'm not exactly here for like mob harassment of any sort, and so it's just also interesting to see that dynamic of how people like just create these mass harassment campaigns and they'll go after anybody. Regardless of what's going on and how J.K. Rowling targets that at trans people very often and most violently, but it can be shifted to anybody because of how much we set up these us versus them narratives. And it's if you're not with me, you're against me sort of mindsets that very much fall into that fascistic sort of worldview that, we start seeing more and more propping up that fascism. I don't want to say the us versus them mindset is exclusive to fascism, but it's certainly as we see fascism growing in our world today, how that mindset becomes more and more prevalent and how fascism kind of takes advantage of it. And so, yeah, it's just a fascinating dynamic. There's a lot of stuff present, even within these simple tweets and the reactions to it that I just kind of find fascinating. And, I don't want to say like, look, it's an example of all of these things, but it's just, it's just so many axes of different elements that are shown here rather than this being like, an epitome of all these things is just a confluence of a lot of things that are sort of hitting in this moment that are just fascinating to me. So I just had to talk about it a little bit. Anyways, I hope you're all doing well, my friends, and I hope you all live long and prosper.